Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Naturalist Capitalist. I'm your host, Reed Coverdale, as always, and I've got a special guest on the show. I've got Stacie Haneline. How's it going, Stacie?
I'm doing pretty well, Reed. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm super glad to have you. We've been talking about it for months now, and finally we're working it out. I've talked a lot with you on Twitter. I like a lot of your stuff. You like a lot of my stuff. Why don't you just tell the viewers about yourself, about your political journey over the last year and a half or last 4 years or whatever. Just tell us kind of how you got to where you are now and where you stand on things.
Sure thing. So I have been an independent all my life. Well, I had been an independent all my life. I agree with the Republicans on some things. I agree with the Libertarians on some things. I agree with the Democrats on some things. Essentially, I really am socially liberal and fiscally conservative, so I'm really more of a libertarian. But in 2016, I did vote for Hillary Clinton. And since then, thanks to Tulsi, thanks to Jared Beck, thanks to Tim Canova, thanks to a lot of other people who are out there spreading the truth, I learned about how horrible politics is. And it's so funny because I've always hated politics, because I assumed that it was just completely corrupt. And now I know about politics and I know that it's absolutely corrupt. I know how much the DNC is able to influence the media. The DNC basically controls the media, which I've learned even more in depth since I've started reading Jared Beck's book, What Happened to Bernie Sanders. And, I'm sure that the Republican Party has their ins with the media as well. So I think that really, I think the same thing that I assumed. I know that what I assumed previously is true, which is that, pretty much everyone in Washington is lying to us. And I'm tired of it, and I don't know how to stop it. And I was a Tulsi-crat. I am still a really big supporter of Tulsi, even though I don't agree with her on a lot of things. But what I really loved about Tulsi was that she was not afraid to stand up to the DNC. She's not afraid to stand up to the military-industrial complex, and she's not afraid to blatantly support Assange. In fact, she's the one who's leading this movement. And, thank God for Justin Amash and Thomas Massie, because they are standing with her. I'm really thankful for that coalition. But after she suspended her campaign, I pretty much immediately joined the Libertarian Party. I had been watching Jacob Hornberger and listening to Jacob Hornberger for quite some time. And I kind of knew that he was my contingency plan, I guess. So that if Tulsi, I knew that she, because of all of the media censorship, I knew that eventually she would have to suspend her campaign, or even if she didn't, I knew that she wouldn't win. And Jacob Hornberger was another voice who was speaking the truth that the government does not want any of us to hear. Right. And he is, and he was, and still is a very strong supporter of Julian Assange. And I think that really my issues are free speech and democracy. And, I have opinions on the other issues, of course, but it's not really about me. It's about the people. Without free speech and democracy, we have nothing. So that's where I stand. I'm sorry, that was a long explanation.
It's good. It's good to make sure people understand what you're saying. So speaking of democracy, I am also new to being a capital L libertarian. I did vote for Gary Johnson in 2016, but honestly, I wasn't a big fan of him. I just hated Hillary and Trump so much. But then after supporting Tulsi Gabbard and seeing that the Democrats are just as unsavable as the Republicans, I was like, okay, I guess I should think about actually investing in the Libertarian Party. So I joined this summer. But the infighting of the parties between the Mises caucus and, the pragmatists, I had no idea that most of this existed. I knew that the libertarian purism was a thing, like the I'm more libertarian than you. I'd heard that for years, but I didn't realize how entrenched and how much infighting there was. And I also didn't realize how the party worked. And something you talked a lot about on Twitter was how Jacob Hornberger was obviously the popular favorite candidate. Most of the people in the elections voted for him, but then the delegates chose Joe Jorgensen and how confusing that was. Do you just want to talk about that, why that frustrated you, and why that doesn't seem very democratic?
Yeah, it just I don't understand how that happened. Jacob Hornberger, he was clearly the leader. And I understand that people were kind of put off when he was, they saw it as like him putting down Justin Amash. And I kind of stayed silent on that because, it's not, I really don't think that it was personal. And I mean, maybe if it was personal, the reason why it was personal was because Justin Amash was such a latecomer, and Jacob Hornberger had already invested so much time and effort, and a lot of people had contributed money to his campaign, myself included. So for Justin Amash to just come in at the last minute, maybe that was what made it personal, if it even was personal at all. But I liked both of them. I loved Jacob Hornberger because he's just fearless. He's just like, he will speak the truth and he doesn't give a shit. Who cares? And the thing is that, like, obviously we know that anything that's like pro Assange, anti-war, that gets censored and silenced.
Right.
And so he was in first place, even though he was getting censored and silenced. I don't know how many times I liked the video that was his pinned tweet. Not the pinned tweet. What do you call it? The first tweet that you see when you go onto his page.
Pinned tweet. That's right. Yeah.
Right. I liked, my like on that was scrubbed like more times than some of Tulsi's controversial tweets have been scrubbed. And he was still the leader. He was still the leader, even though I know that he was being censored and silenced. And so to me, that was just really inspiring. And yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand how, he was in first place. Judge Gray was clearly in second place. Vermin Supreme, Adam Kokesh, I don't know who was in third place. But Joe Jorgensen wasn't anywhere near, the top three. She was not even in the top three. So when the delegates went to that convention and they decided, and they chose Joe Jorgensen, it's not that I don't like Joe Jorgensen or respect Joe Jorgensen. I really do. I like her a lot. I respect her a lot. I'm not really much of a feminist, but it's nice to have a female voice. But before feminism or, any of those other things, I am for democracy. And I just don't understand how I don't get it.
Yeah. So I probably agree with Jacob Hornberger on like 90% of the issues. The one thing I didn't like about him was he seemed kind of caustic, and it really did come out, even if there was nothing personal going on between him and Justin Amash. To me, there was like nothing pragmatic about him. It was all idealism. And given the situation we were going through with the coronavirus and people being locked down in their own homes, people losing their jobs, I think it's a time to be principled, but it's also a time to realize what was going on. I agree with you on Justin Amash. Like I thought his 3-week exploratory committee was way too late. I mean, I've heard that he didn't want to join right after the impeachment because he would have been riding the coattails of the impeachment. He didn't want to be the impeachment candidate coming in. But by the time he started looking into it, which was in April, I think, yeah, I think you're right. It was too late. And I think he might have realized that. I think that might be why he decided not to do it, because I think if he had done it, he would have gotten the nomination. And I feel like maybe he felt, this isn't the right time. I'm squashing what's been building up for months. I'll just try this again later. At least I'm hoping that's what his reasoning was. But do you think the Libertarian Party needs to be more pragmatic or more extreme, or is it kind of a mix? I was talking with you before we started the video. I think you can do both. I think you can be extremely principled, but know which issues to die on the hill for. And I think that too many libertarians think that if you're not bringing every single issue to the forefront all the time, then you're somehow sacrificing your principles. I don't think so. I don't think that prostitution being legalized is at the same level as ending the war in Afghanistan. I think that should be something that we should push for extremely hard. And some of the more sidelined issues, we don't need to give up on them, but we don't need to make them the forefront of our campaign. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And, just like you, there are definitely some things that I disagree with Jacob Hornberger on. For example, like you said, like the UBI, not the UBI, but the
cash payments temporarily.
Cash payments, yeah. Yes. And Justin Amash, I really liked how he explicitly stated, if there's money that's going to be given out, it should go directly to the people. So he was in favor of those cash payments, just not to bail out big banks and big corporations, which I think is extremely pragmatic, and that's really what they should have done. Because, Jacob Hornberger, what I loved and admired about him so much and still do was really just his passion and his I can tell that he truly believes that what he is suggesting is going to make a difference, and really that he's just not afraid to speak the truth. And that he, every second he's like, free Assange, free Snowden. And so his fiscal policies they are extreme, because we do have people starving, and people are unemployed and they can't pay their bills and they can't buy food. So Justin Amash is that would have been the perfect suggestion. Now, am I in favor of UBI? No. But am I in favor of, cash payments to the people until this is taken care of? Yes, because if they're going to shut down the economy, all these businesses are going to close, and what's going to happen to people? So, yeah, I'm in favor of that more pragmatic solution. And I don't know, I don't know who is in power in the Libertarian Party. I don't know. I mean, maybe you can shed some more light on that. Like, I don't know if the delegates and the donors are controlling the Libertarian Party just like the delegates and donors are controlling the DNC. I guess that's my thing. What do you think about
Yeah, so I admittedly don't know enough about the inside politics because I haven't gotten involved with it too much. But I think that so few people are involved at an actual political level that the extremists do run the party, and the donors run the party because no one, I mean, so many people who end up voting Libertarian, like what was it? I haven't seen the final count. Is it like 1.5 million that voted for Joe Jorgensen right now? Something like that.
I'm not really sure. I think it's around 2%, 1%, 2%, something like that, which is really not that bad, but it's not that good either.
It's not that good either, but that number is so inflated compared to how many people are actually involved in the party. So I don't think that enough people are trying to change the party. I think it is run by a very small group of people. I should actually talk to my friend David Fight more about this because he has been involved. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's been involved in the Libertarian Party for a long time, and he knows a lot about the inner political workings. I admittedly don't know enough about it, but I do think that it kind of needs to be invaded by people who end up voting for it and care about it, because and that's why I actually registered as a Libertarian this time around, because I couldn't be involved in anything. I voted for Tulsi Gabbard in the Democratic primary, and I wasn't officially a Libertarian until August, so I couldn't really make a difference, but I want to this time around, whatever happens in 2022, 2024. So I remember on Twitter, you were saying during the summer, you weren't going to vote for Joe Jorgensen because of how the Libertarians basically rigged the primary or the election process to give it to her instead of Jacob Hornberger. And then later on you said, okay, things are so bad, I am going to vote for her. And then you ended up voting for Trump in the end. So do you want to just tell us your journey there, why you made the decisions you made?
Sure. I guess, to be honest, to be completely honest with you, it was not just that. It was when, I was upset about that. I was like, wait, how did she get the nomination? But to be completely honest, I was also irritated when Joe Jorgensen said that Tulsi Gabbard was the most dangerous person in the primary.
I think a lot of people got upset about that, not just you, including me.
I was pretty mad. I mean, it was a I wasn't mad for that long, but I was mad enough to, to get a lot of other people mad too, which I kind of regret. I'm sorry, Libertarian Party, I'm sorry. But, and I do see her point. I understand that Tulsi she's not as fiscally conservative as most of us would like for her to be. She's not. And I agree, she's not as fiscally conservative as I would like for her to be.
Yeah, do you mind if I throw something in there too? I think there was a little bit of jealousy because I almost felt like Libertarians liked Tulsi more than they liked Joe Jorgensen. And then Ron Paul had Tulsi Gabbard on his show, and he didn't have Joe Jorgensen on his show. So I feel like there was a little bit of animosity when Dave Smith opened that up. She kind of jumped on it, and then she realized all the backlash, and then she spent the entire campaign trying to backpedal and be like, oh no, Tulsi's great, she's amazing. Like they silenced her.
Thanks to you. That was your influence, wasn't it?
Some of it, but I think a lot of people were like, bad move, Joe, don't do that. But yeah.
Well, I am glad that you mentioned that Ron Paul show because I love that show. I mean, I watched the whole thing a couple of times, and that's where they talk about the coalition. You know, they talk about Thomas Massie and Justin Amash and Dennis Kucinich, and you know how they don't have to be in the same political party, but they all are working toward the most important things, and so they have that 80-20 thing going on, to where they do agree on 80% of the issues, and they want to focus on the issues that are the most important, like you said. And my favorite part of that Ron Paul show was when he said, you know, you're the one that we like.
Yeah.
You know, basically saying, and then immediately after that, he said, why don't you go ahead and tell our viewers what they can do to help and how they can get into contact with you? And I was like, boom. He is telling the libertarians that we're with Tulsi. It was not until after Tulsi suspended her campaign that people even really started to pay attention to the libertarian candidates. So I do think that, you know, Tulsi might not have been the money holders / delegates pick, but she was definitely Ron Paul's pick, and she was Nick Sarwark's pick. And you know, I think that's saying something, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So why did you end up voting for Trump? What was your rationale behind that? Was it Biden's bad, or what was your thinking there?
It was Biden's bad, and also, to be honest, I think that Trump has grown as a human being since 2016. In 2016, I saw him as this impulsive, aggressive, arrogant, you know, piece of shit. Really, you know, the whole, you know, thing that he said on the show, and what really bothered me about him, to be honest, I was so much more of a feminist in 2016 than I am now. It's so funny. You go to law school, you practice law for a little while, and I'm really just not a feminist anymore, because the whole attitude of feminism, it doesn't work. It's not how you get ahead. It's not how you get power as a female. But that whole thing bothered me, and what really bothered me about Trump in 2016 was when he said, Hillary Clinton, she just doesn't have the look. And I was thinking, fat, bald, two-paid piece of shit. So and I really wasn't paying attention to politics. I didn't know. But now I know, you know. I watched Hillary, the movie, which really has been so censored and silenced to the point where Citizens United is not even in my constitutional law book. It's not there. We were taught, well, my professor had us read it. He had us go online and read it somewhere. But, you know, law students are, they're not exposed to the actual case itself. And the issue of that case was whether Hillary, the movie, could be shown on pay-per-view, I don't remember what it was back then, for free. And, you know, the court said, yeah, you know, free speech is free speech, so yeah, they can. And I watched Hillary, the movie. It was like hell to even find it. But there were so many things, there still are so many things that people don't know about the Clintons. And I know that, you know, the Clintons are controlling the media, and yeah, Biden is shit. But no, I do think that Trump, okay, so David Spurrier said, you know, hey, let's think about reasons to vote for Trump without saying the word Biden, right? Remember when he mentioned that?
Yeah.
I do think that Trump has grown as a human being since then. He hasn't started any new wars. Yeah, I'm pissed off about the assassination of Soleimani. You know, yeah, I'm pissed off about Bill 6666. I thought that was shit. But I also think that, the president of the United States, people think that that person is like omnipotent, omniscient, and really he's not. He knows the information that he's been given. Why he doesn't fire Mike Pompeo, I don't know. And honestly, that's my biggest problem with him. But at least he fired John Bolton. And when I saw that video where he learned the news of Ginsburg's passing, where he was initially told about it, his response was just so human and so it was good. It was like, wow, that's too bad. And it was like, this is a real human being, and he's such an asshole. He's such an idiotic, arrogant asshole because people attack him all the time and they spread false rumors about him all the time. And so I think that I just kind of I kind of anticipated that we would be in the situation where we are now, and I wanted to be one person who would go, me, I voted for Trump, because I know that there are probably a lot of people who voted for Trump who probably aren't going to admit it.
Yeah. I attack Trump all the time on this show, but I'm going to say what I like about him. In my opinion, he's sort of a con artist, and he didn't really do a lot of the things that he talked about. But it was obvious that the media and the the elite hated him just for what he was saying, even though he wouldn't do it. He would say things about, oh, the military-industrial complex, it's a real thing. Or he, attacking Jeb Bush on the stage about how his brother got us into a disastrous war in Iraq, and talking about how these generals want to bomb. The fact that they hated him as much as they did based on just what he would say, it made me like him a little bit, and it also just showed that if someone like Ron Paul ever won, I mean, what would they do to him? Like all the hell they've given Trump for the tiny things he's done. If we got Tulsi Gabbard or Ron Paul in there, it would be scary. And I also like that Trump would, even though I don't think he told the truth a lot, he would still take it to the media when they were being hypocrites. And what you can give him credit for is he exposed people as being two-faced because they would do anything to oppose him, no matter what he was saying. Even if he was saying something that they usually agree with, they'd suddenly do a 180. It was hilarious watching the debates with Joe Biden. They asked Joe Biden what he would have done to contain coronavirus. And Joe Biden ended up saying exactly what Trump did as president. It's like, what are you complaining about? So the era of Trump for me, and the reason I'll be sad to see him gone, is that he exposed that we live in a racket, that no one is telling the truth. It's all lies. And he made their head spin because he would say things that pissed them off, and he would just completely show that they are completely unprincipled idiots who don't stand for anything. And the other thing is, at least with him, he was opposed to the media. I like the idea when the government and the media are not in lockstep together. And now that we have Biden, it's kind of media and Biden administration will not, there won't be much fighting. It'll be a smooth road forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
So what do you think about going forward? I've talked about the Libertarian Party being the only viable vehicle that seems to have wheels on it, because we've got the People's Party and we've got the Green Party. Kanye West won more votes than the Green Party did. The People's Party, I don't think it's going to turn into anything. They're talking about trying to make it a wide coalition, but it's really just an ultra leftist group, just like the Green Party. And so I don't really see the duopoly as savable. I can't see us invading either party and fixing it. So what do you think about the political landscape now that Biden won? What do we do moving forward?
Well, first of all, I I really am pretty libertarian. I really am pretty libertarian. There are very few things that I disagree with, especially, the more and more I think about it. I used to be really, really pro public schools, equal opportunity, equal spending for every single child in the United States. And I've kind of, I'm not really to the point where I'm like, yay, charter schools. I'm just not. But I do really get it. So I myself am libertarian. But like you said, the Libertarian Party is so purist and so really, they're not pragmatic. How do we get it to where they are willing to, do 80-20? Like, hey, we're not all going to agree on everything because, and here's a good segue, because we all think for ourselves.
Right.
We don't want to be the party of robots. The Justice Democrats PAC, you can go on Wikipedia and there's a list of things that they all believe.
Right.
They all believe in the Green New Deal, da 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 da. And the moment that any, political party or any group or anything tells me that I have to believe da 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 da, I'm going to say, no.
Yeah.
Fuck off, because I think for myself. And I think that most libertarians, really, there's no such thing as a real libertarian, because a real libertarian is going to disagree.
Right.
At least the people who we want to be with us, we want them to disagree with us on some stuff, right? Like, we don't want them to be clones of us. I don't want anyone to be a clone of me. Right. And, a lot of people, this is going to be pretty controversial, but there are people who supported Tulsi Gabbard who saw her as some kind of goddess, and they still see her as some kind of goddess. And it's really fucking weird.
Yes.
I'm not going to agree with everything that she says. I'm just not. So I think that as free-thinking libertarians, and that's what a libertarian should be. Adam Kokesh said, the first thing that you need to do when you're trying to recruit new libertarians is get people to think for themselves.
Right.
If they're thinking for themselves, eventually they're going to be libertarians, right?
Right.
So I don't want any clones of me or clones of you or clones of Jacob Hornberger. I want the Libertarian Party to be the party of free thinkers, which means that we are going to disagree, and we should disagree, but we should also have that 80% of things that we do agree on. Now, prostitution, no prostitution, I don't really care. I know a couple of really good prosecutors, and there are really good prosecutors out there who they just don't file charges on prostitution, because usually those cases come up when there's an issue of consent, and they don't give a shit. They just don't file the charges.
Right.
So, that's just not one of those, like you said, that's just not one of those things in the 80% that's most important. So we need to focus on anti-war, free speech, democracy, and we need to also realize that the president of the United States is not the be all end all of society.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that everybody needs to realize, because I'm seeing so many people on Twitter already thinking about 2024 instead of 2021, and even not on a political level, screw who cares who your state representative is. We need to prove that libertarianism is a lifestyle and a philosophy. When someone thinks libertarian, we want them to think generous or takes care of his neighbors, cares about your individual rights, because that's not what they think right now. When they think libertarian, they think like money grabbing, greedy, isolationist, like living in my cabin out in the woods with my AR-15s, and that's fine if you got those libertarians, but I
I'm
think
not
those of us who,
opposed to having a cabin in the woods with my AR-15, just
yeah,
for the
exactly,
record. I would really
exactly.
like to be there. I would love to. But my husband
But
has a job in the city.
yeah, the people who are like advancing the philosophy in public, I feel like we need an overhaul on our marketing campaign. Like we should really be talking about mutual aid and taking care of each other on a voluntary level, because a lot of people, when they hear about the more radical ideas we have, they're terrified about the repercussions. If you can show them that the problems exist because we're living the wrong way, because we're not taking care of each other, if you can convince them that the US is so fucked right now with the coronavirus because people are not individualists anymore, they don't take care of themselves, they don't take care of their families, they don't take care of their friends, they just expect some higher entity to do it, and then when it doesn't come, nobody can do anything. If we can convince them that we need systemic change in our society, how we treat each other, that's how we have a winning message. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, that is what we need to do.
yeah.
So
So,
how do we do that?
well, I try to lead by example, and I try not to brag, but I talk about it on the show, like what I'm doing to help my friends. I've given a lot of money to people, and then just like I feel like the online persona of libertarians is so caustic and hateful if you disagree a tiny bit. And I try to not be that voice. I try to be that 80-20 thing you were talking about. That I think people they need to do that. They need to, like you said, they need to realize that the most individualist thing is realizing that individuals are not going to all think the same way, that diversity is good, because that's why we hate the Democrats so much, right? Because they are like thought police. That's not what we want. So I talk a lot about, in presidential terms, I'd love to see a coalition between like left and right libertarians agreeing on the important issues. And I've talked about an Amash Gabbard ticket. You like the idea of a Massie Amash ticket. You want to just tell us about that, why you think that would be the best way to go? And is that in the Libertarian Party? Is that an independent party? Is that the Republican Party? What's your thought process there?
I would like to see, and this I've been saying for a while, I would like to see an independent party. An independent party. And only because I don't really see the Libertarian Party accepting Tulsi. And I know that Thomas Massie is more of a libertarian than he is a Republican, but he's staying in the Republican Party because we have a two-party system.
Right.
But my vision, my personal utopian vision would be, an independent party where we have that 80-20 thing, and we do not opine on abortion. Personally, I think that the abortion laws are, Roe versus Wade is just fine the way that, the precedent says. But you can be either pro-choice or pro-life in the independent party. But you're anti-war, and you're pro-democracy, and you're pro-First Amendment. Pro-First Amendment, like, those are things that we all agree on, and the thing is, I've been thinking about, why people fall into certain categories. And the more I think about it, like the Democrats, they're saying that they're going to take care of people, right? Like they're saying, give everyone food and housing and UBI, da 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 da. But the more they take care of us, the more they control us. And that's my problem with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So maybe that part is in like the 20% that I should let go, because democracy and free speech are more important than that,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm not like an elitist. I'm not even, and I'm not like hugely rich, but I guess I'm privileged enough to where I can think that, but I need to take myself out of my own shoes and put myself into somebody else's shoes and say, you know what, like my opinion on that and my viewpoints on that shouldn't be what defines the party. You know, it should be, because I believe in democracy more than, you know, the rest of that shit.
Yeah.
That what all of the people think is, you know, that's what it should be. So, okay, so Thomas Massie, you asked like, why do I think Thomas Massie would be great? So
Yeah.
Justin Amash is a genius. He is a brainiac. He is, he's just really, he knows the law inside and out. When Justin Amash can't read a bill and analyze it within the allotted time that Congress has given him, you know that there's a problem, because he is that smart. So when he's like, it's not the same when someone else, like if someone else said, oh, well, I couldn't finish reading it, you know, it's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but when Justin Amash is complaining that he didn't have enough time to read and analyze a bill, that's a big thing. So Justin Amash is like our brainiac, right?
Right.
But to be honest with you, Reed, when he came into the picture and he was, you know, debating the other libertarian candidates, I did not see that the charisma, the fight, I don't think he's mean enough.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's like tough enough and mean enough.
Right.
And I don't think, you know, a lot of really, really, really smart people are not quick on their feet. Like Tulsi, she's really fast on her feet. And Massie, so did you ever see the video on YouTube where Massie talks about how he built his off-grid home in Kentucky?
Yep. Yep.
I just, when I saw that, and I saw the part where he was like, you know, I'm not going to go in anybody else's holler and tell them what to do, and nobody's going to come into my holler and tell me what to do. You know, I was like, whoa, okay, you have, like, he has that thing about him where you're just kind of like drawn in. You know, he's got that regular human being thing. You know, people thought that George W. Bush was like this regular guy, right? But he wasn't. He wasn't
Right.
a regular guy. But Thomas Massie is like this regular guy who just happens to be a genius, who has like invented all of these things. And he has that stubborn streak that, like he's ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when he was saying that he went to that meeting to try to make a change in his community because he was tired of, you know, all these rules and regulations telling them what he could and could not do on his holler, and he stood up to give his 5-minute speech, and then they told him to sit down, and he said, I didn't know what I was going to do then, but I was not going to sit down.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we need. And Justin Amash, you know, like with Justin Amash as VP, he's the brain. Like the VP doesn't have to go in front of the camera all the time. But Massie needs that legal mind to be working behind the scenes, because Massie, he's really smart with law, but he really needs Justin there to, you know, to really kind of like fill in the pieces that he doesn't know about. And then Tulsi, I think Tulsi needs to take a break. I think she really needs to take a break. I would love for her to get a law degree. You know, that guy on Twitter said something about how she should be the AG, and I was just like, attorney general has to be an attorney, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but no, I think she is the one who's diplomatic. You know, whoever that guy was, he said, we need someone who will seek revenge on all these. Tulsi's not the revenge person.
Right.
She's not. Tulsi's not revenge. You know, she's too good. She's too, not like too good, but too good. Like her heart is too pure.
Yeah.
Tulsi is the one who is capable of bringing peace. And you know, after Jamal Khashoggi was murdered, Mike Pompeo was the one who had to go to Saudi Arabia and talk to MBS. And you know, we know what happened with that.
Right.
Now, Tulsi would have to be the one to, you know, it's not the president who flies overseas to talk to people in circumstances like that. It's the Secretary of State. And I don't see anyone else with the balls and the heart and the knowledge, you know, just the knowledge of foreign policy and the understanding of how things work. You know, it was unconvincing to me when Mike Pompeo said there's no evidence, blah, 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 blah. Now, would Tulsi say that? You know, a lot of the time I think that government says they lie to us because they think that we couldn't handle the truth.
Right.
And
Yeah,
the truth is, we don't know what would happen to us if we defied MBS.
Yeah. So I would prefer a Massie Amash presidency to an Amash Gabbard presidency. There's just a couple things with it. One is you'll never get Thomas Massie to run for president, which is one of the great things about him because, you know, a leader is someone who doesn't want the power. You know, you'd have to somehow draft him and convince him. The other thing I'm wondering is how would they win? You know, the biggest thing about the Amash Gabbard idea is the combined movement you can build, where if it's a Massie Amash, you're not reaching as wide of a coalition. So how do we get Massie to run? And then if he does, how do we win? Would be the question I have.
So the fact that Massie wouldn't just say, hey, I'm going to run for president. That's another thing that I really like about him.
Right.
You know, I love that because, like you said, a great leader isn't just going to be like me, 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 me.
Right.
Which is why, you know, those of us who see him as that great leader, we're going to have to be the ones to say, hey, Massie, we want you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, maybe he will join the Libertarian Party. Maybe he won't. You know, I think you said on your podcast, the one that you had me listen to, that it's, you know, Trump is going to run again in 2024.
I said maybe. I'm not sure if he's serious, but I think, and then I followed up by saying if he doesn't, we'll get some goofball from the right. So.
Right. So I think, you know, the Republican Party, they're not going to be all about Massie because Massie's too much of a free thinker.
Right.
You know, because Massie disagrees with them on some stuff. But I do think that there needs to be, like, those of us who see Massie as that great leader, like, it's our job to prop him up. Like, since he's that great person, he's not going to do it himself. You know, he just kind of landed in Congress because people saw something in him that they wanted. You know, they said, hey, he's representing me. You know, he's saying what I believe. And so we want him there. And I think that it would have to be the same way. Now, whether they both switch to the Independent Party or they're both in the Libertarian Party. I mean, can you imagine Massie and Amash both in the Libertarian Party? I mean, the delegates and the donors, they're just going to have to get over it.
Right.
Because who are the rest of these candidates? Nobody knows the rest of these candidates.
Yeah.
And, you know, the things that they have done in Congress are they're like all libertarian ideals that those guys are fighting for. And you know, I believe in what they're both saying. And I love Justin Amash. I think he is like one of the smartest people that I know. Well, I've never met him, but that I know of. And
Right.
you know, Massie, he's smart in a different way, and he's got that charm and that fight. Like the presidential candidate needs to have the charm and the fight, and you know, the I don't even know what you would call it, but what Tulsi has. They need to have what Tulsi has.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think Justin Amash, you know, he's smarter than Massie. He's smarter than Gabbard. He's smarter than pretty much everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we need to have him in that position where he can read and, you know, read and write and advise, because the president is not going to have the time. The president's got to be in front of the camera. And that's just, you know, that's how I see it. And Secretary of State, like, I don't see anyone else on the planet that I know of who would really be a good Secretary of State. Like, who is going to want to go over to Saudi Arabia after Jamal Khashoggi is murdered and sit down with MBS?
Right.
You know, Tulsi's the only one who's tough enough to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, you make some really great points there, and I think we just need to be talking about these ideas now and not in 2023, because we got to get a grassroots movement going. That's what the left always does. You know, they start talking about things now, and I know the left thinks that it's super unorganized, but I feel like we're failing compared to them. Like they've got networks and they've got people on the ground doing stuff. So I think mulling all these ideas over is great. So in the comments, everyone who's watching, let us know what you think. You know, Amash Gabbard, Massie Gabbard, Massie Amash, like, what do you guys want to see? And I'll put a link to Stacie's Twitter so you guys can follow her there. And I'll give you the last word, Stacie. Thanks for coming on. Just let us know what we can expect following you on Twitter or whatever. Just tell us whatever you want, and then we'll close out.
Well, Reed, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so glad that I got to finally meet you. I think that you are really a genius. And
Wow.
no, I think you really are. You should take an IQ test. But no, you're right up there with, like, you know, you're like above the people that I graduated from law school with. And if you ever do decide to run for office in Utah, you will have my support 100%. And but hey, guys, don't ever count on me to run for office. It's not my thing. But yeah, I'm on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, and I do plan to start my own YouTube show soon. I'm kind of lining up people who I would like to have come on the show. So if you do want to be interviewed by me, you know, let me know, or yeah, just shoot me a DM on Twitter. I think my DMs are open to anybody, I think. Or just contact me somehow. But Reed, thank you so much for having me on the show. And to everyone who's listening, just keep listening to Reed. He is your guy. Stay tuned to this channel, okay?
I'll definitely have to have you back on with that type of supportive commenting there. So thank you so much, Stacie. And I'll, as I said, your Twitter will be in the link, and we'll be interested to see your YouTube channel form.
Thanks, Reed. Thank you so much.